Hey, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to dive into my setup for the Nikon Z9. We're going to talk about what's been working for me so far for the different types of photography that I shoot and enjoy. We're going to look at my bank settings, have a look at my menu, how I have that set up, as well as the iMenu. We'll look over my custom controls for both shooting and playback, as well as dive into my recall shooting functions, how I've got that set up for different types of photography. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video. I've got a little gift for you guys to download, and I'll give you a link to that at the end. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about are my menu bank names. Now, Nikon provides you with 4 different banks for both the photo shooting menu as well as the custom settings menu. Now, to access those banks, you press the menu button and then make sure you're in the little camera icon over there, and then hit your right arrow and you'll go to the shooting menu bank. Now initially those banks aren't going to have any names next to them, and they're just going to be labeled A, B, C, and D, and it'll look the exact same in the custom shootings menu. But you can see I've renamed mine. For bank A, I've got it set to my handheld settings, so that's just general run and gun, maybe street photography, photographing my kids, things of that nature. Anytime I'm shooting handheld, I've got my settings for that. B, I've got set to tripod, so whenever I need to lock my camera down to a tripod, landscape and astrophotography, I've got separate settings for that. C is fast action, so that's your sports and your wildlife settings. And then D is for my aerial photography. I shoot a lot of aerials, and so those are my settings for those. Okay, so that's what the shooting menu bank looks like. Let's go have a look at what the custom settings menu banks look like. So what you want to do is you want to hit your left arrow on your camera to go back over to the far left menu screen, and then drop down to the little pencil icon, and then hit your right arrow to go to your custom settings bank, and then hit the right arrow again to see all your banks. Now you can see I've named mine exactly the same as my photo shooting menu banks. So what that means is if I'm switching from handheld to shooting on a tripod, I need to go back into my photo shooting menu bank and select B or tripod, as well as in my custom settings bank. So I have to change it in both locations. It would have been nice if you could just have 8 sets of banks and you just change it at one spot and it makes all the changes so that you don't have to go back and forth. But for whatever reason, Nikon elected to do it this way, so that's what we're stuck with. Okay, so I'm not going to dive deep into how I named those banks or my specific settings. I did make a video on how to set all that up, and so I'll put it up here or here. I'm not sure where exactly it pops up, but I'll put it up on the screen and also a link in the description so that you can go check that out. Okay, next on the list is my menu. So to access my menu, first of all, of course, if you're not in the menu screen, you have to press the menu button. And then on the left side, you go all the way down to the very bottom icon, which is like the little hamburger menu symbol with a check mark. Now, if you do not see that symbol, you probably have, well, you would definitely have the little hamburger with a clock, and so that's your recent settings. So I'll show you really quick. If you don't have the check mark, what you want to do is you want to go down to the very last item, and if you're just initially setting this up, you're only going to have 4 items in your My Menu, or here. And you want to hit Choose Tab, and if you see Recent Settings, so if it looks like that, you want to change that to My Menu. All right, so now we've got My Menu set up. Oops, there we go. We'll go kind of quickly through how I've got my menu loaded right now. So first of all, at the very top, I have airplane mode. And that's a toggle, and we'll talk about that a little bit, the importance of having a toggle setting at the top here in a little bit. But I've got airplane mode, I've got silent mode, I've got camera sounds, and you can see that little arrow next to camera sounds. That means that it has a sub menu, and we'll cover that a little bit later too. Below that, picture review, record location data, self timer, autofocus detection options, focus peaking, focus tracking, starlight view, format, and then save load menu settings. And so that's how I have it set up right now, and pretty much this has been fairly static the last few months. I have removed a few things. I may remove a few more that are a bit redundant, but as of right now, that's how that's set up. Now, if you want to add, so if you're just starting out, setting up your My Menu, and you want to add something, you go down to Add Items, and then you hit the right arrow, and then you go to whatever menu it is where that setting that you want to add lives. So we'll just say it's in the Playback menu, and then I'm going to hit the right arrow, and let's just say I want to throw delete in there for whatever reason. So I'm going to just highlight delete, and I'm going to press OK, and you can see that was added to the very top of my menu. Now it's going to have you choose a position of where you want to put that. So if I want it right at the top, I would just leave it there. And if I wanted to maybe move it down below, you can see that yellow line that's moving, and I could throw it wherever I want. So let's just say I wanted it there. So now if you go back up, there's my delete. So let's just say I wanted to remove delete from my menu. So you would go down and highlight remove items. You'd hit the right arrow, and then you would go down to the item that you want to remove. In this case, it's delete. And then you're going to press the OK button, and then delete. And it's going to ask you, are you sure? And yes, I'm sure. And now you're done. Okay. So let's just say you've added all your items, but for whatever reason, you want to move something around. So the way you'll do that is you will go down to rank items and then hit the right arrow and then select whatever it is that you want to move. Let's just say it's picture review. I'm going to select that. I'm going to then use my up and down arrow to move it up or down, and you can see that line that is indicating where I'm going to move it to. So I'm going to move it in between silent mode and camera sounds. So I'm going to hit OK, and that's it. And then I've now moved it. Let's make sure it did it. And yes, it did. So there we go. Now, quick tip. I'm going to later show you how I've got a function button set up to when I press it, it takes me to my menu, and it takes me to the top of my menu. Now, earlier I said that you want to make sure that you have a toggle setting at the very top of my menu, and the reason is that if you have, let's just say, I'm going to go ahead and move, see how picture review has a sub-menu, has that little arrow over there? So I'm going to go down and I'm going to rank items, and I'm going to move picture review to the top. So I just moved it all the way to the very top of my menu. I'm going to go ahead and go back. I'm going to make sure that it's there. And now for me, the little key button, function number 4, is my function button that I have set to take me to the top of my menu. And so I'm going to go ahead and press that, and what you'll notice is it takes me into the submenu of picture review. Well, I don't really want that. I don't want to go into the submenu. I just want to go to the top of my menu so that I can access my menu a lot quicker. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. I'm going to go and re-rank my menu. I should just go up. Oh, I need to select. I'm kind of getting... All right, so I'm going to select Picture Review. I'm going to move it down, and I'm going to go ahead and put it underneath Camera Sounds where it was originally. And then I'm going to hit the back arrow, and I just want to make sure that it did what I wanted. So now I have airplane mode, and it's an on and off, it's a toggle type setting. And that's what I want there at the very top. So now what I'll do is I'm going to hit the little key button, which takes me to the top of my menu. I'm going to hit that, and you can see there I am at the top of my menu. I didn't go into a sub-menu, and now I can select whatever setting that I need. Okay, so the next menu that we're going to talk about is the iMenu, and this menu changes based on which bank you have selected, which custom menu bank you have selected. So first of all, I'll just kind of show you what the iMenu looks like. You press the little I button on the back of your camera, and you can see that you have 12 different boxes that give you quick access to whatever settings you may need. Okay, so to edit your iMenu, what you want to do is press the menu button, and you're going to want to select whichever bank, custom settings bank, that you want to edit. In this case, I have A or handheld selected. And then you want to drop down to F Controls and hit the right arrow, and you'll see Customize iMenu as your first selection, or F1. Hit the right arrow again, and you'll see your 12 little boxes, and you can just select whichever one you want to change. So in this case, let's just say I want to change this first one. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and then I'll select whichever setting I want to set there. So in this case, I want it to stay set picture control, so I'm going to hit OK, and there you go. So that's it. That's pretty easy. The hard part is trying to figure out exactly what you want displayed for each bank, and that's the tough part. I created a PDF that I'll give you guys a download link to at the end of the video, and it goes through all, kind of how I have mine set up. Again, this is a very personal thing, so it may not work for you, but hopefully it'll kind of just show you how you can set up yours and maybe give you some ideas. But when you're looking at the PDF, you can see that, and I'll also provide a blank one so that you can download it and record your settings. And I basically use this so that I have a hard copy of my settings for my camera, so that if I ever have to reset it, I can pull this out and I can set up my camera the way I finally tuned it up. But what you'll notice is I've got these blue boxes, and those blue boxes are settings that remain the same between all the different banks, and I try to keep things as even, same for my function buttons. You're going to notice that I try to keep it pretty much the same for all the banks, if I can, for muscle memory. My little squirrel brain cannot remember 4 different sets of customized buttons on the back of the camera, and that would be just too much. It would kind of kill the flow while shooting. So I try to keep everything as close to the same as I can, but for different types of shooting, I may need a certain setting. So, as you're going through this, in this case, you'll see that the blue, those are the ones that are going to be the same between all my different banks, and then the other, I guess, 5 down on the bottom row, they kind of change between the different banks. Anyways. All right. So let's quickly go through how I've got a couple of mine set up. So we'll look at handheld. Set picture control, upper left, and then I've got monitor viewfinder brightness. I tend to need that quite often. Auto bracketing, custom control shooting, so that if I do need to, and we're going to talk about the custom controls shooting next, but if I do need to modify a button in the field, I have quick access to that. Now, I've pretty much got my button layout figured out, so I may remove this down the road, but for now I've left it there as I'm figuring out how I like this camera setup. Shooting menu bank and then custom settings bank. This provides quick access to change banks. So let's just say I wanted to go shoot some, put my camera on a tripod, shoot a landscape. All I'd need to do is select that, go over, select tripod, and then go over to my custom settings, go over, select tripod, and now all my settings that I've got for tripod shooting have been restored. So quick and dirty way to access that. Down below, metering. So far the top row and then metering are all standardized between all the banks, so they remain the same. So I can quick access to go from center weighted or to maybe spot or spot with highlights, highlight weighted metering. I tend to go from highlight to matrix from time to time, so I wanted quick access to that. Okay, next is, let's see, what am I? I'm in shooting bank B. So yeah, focus stacking. So I've got my focus shift shooting, interval timer shooting, multiple exposure, focus peaking, and then HDR overlay, all there for quick access. All right, let's see what we have over on handheld. And for handheld, so remember the top row and the bottom right are all the same. I've got autofocus area mode, subject detection selection. I've got silent mode. That's typically if I'm shooting, maybe using this camera for some street photography and I don't want the shutter sound, or maybe I'm going into a area where I don't want to disturb anybody and I have quick access to that. Multiple exposure, focus peaking, and then HDR overlay. All right, so let's go ahead and have a look at Bank C, fast action. So in Bank C, and you can see I changed them both. I'm just in that habit. In reality, all I would have needed to do was change my custom settings bank, but I'm just always in the habit of switching them both when I change things. So again, as I talked about, top row and the bottom right is the same. And then we've got autofocus area mode, subject detection. We've got silent mode. We've got focus mode, focus peaking, and image quality. So I threw image quality in here because sometimes if I'm shooting sports and I know I'm going to shoot a lot of frames and I may not, the lighting's pretty good and not changing a whole bunch. I'll throw it in JPEG, especially if I have to, get the images turned around pretty quick. So quick access to make those changes there. All right, so let's go look at custom D. Now you'll see when I change the custom settings to D, it's going to switch my iMenu. Okay, so in reality, I really don't use a lot of, for aerials, the only thing I really use quite often when I'm shooting aerials is changing my monitor and viewfinder brightness. Everything, I don't bracket a whole lot, and sometimes I need to change my metering mode, but not all that often. And the remainder of these really aren't necessary. I just had to put something there, so I put these. But in reality, I don't access these a whole lot. So that's my iMenu for for my aerial photography. Okay, so again, my settings are going to be completely different than what you may need. So just I recommend logging how you've got it set up and make changes as you go, and eventually you'll figure it out. I'm still working on mine, but this is pretty close to how it's going to stay. Okay, so the next topic is going to be your custom controls, shooting and playback, where you can actually assign different settings to your function buttons. Now, this is menu custom settings menu bank specific, meaning that you could map out different settings for your function buttons between banks. I didn't do that. I tried to keep everything exactly the same for muscle memory purposes, so that if I'm, no matter what bank I'm using, if I press a certain button, I know what I'm going to get. It would be a bit too hard to try to remember what everything does between the banks, or at least my squirrel brain can't do it. So, um, so you'll see that I pretty much kept everything the same except for one particular item, and we'll look at that in a second. Let me just kind of show you how to edit this. So the way you do it is you press the menu button, and then you want to go to your custom settings menu. First of all, select the bank that you want to edit, then go to your down to your controls, and drop down to custom controls shooting, and that's where you have access to all your different function buttons. And so, for example, if I wanted to change function 2, you just you highlight it and then press the OK button, and you can select whatever it is that you want. In my case, I have it set to zoom so I can check focus, but set it to whatever you need, and then you can see it'll be assigned to that. And remember, it's bank specific. So, if you want to have function 2 to do different things between the different banks, you can set that up. Okay, so that's how you make the changes to your function buttons. Now, for my settings, I'm looking at my PDF here, and I'll throw this up on the screen so you can see it. But for my settings, for function 1, I've got it set to recall shooting functions hold, and that's for all 4 banks. For function 2, I've got it set to zoom to 100% for checking focus, critical focus. Function 3, choose image area. Sometimes I may go from FX to DX mode, or I may go to square, so I've got it set up for that. Your function for your vert, which is, it's hard to see on the screen down there, but it's down by the vertical shutter button. That's my exposure compensation. FN4 protect, that's access top item in my menu, and I showed you earlier how to set that up, how to set up my menu, and the importance of putting a toggle setting at the very top so that you don't go into a sub menu. So just remember that. Down below we have my autofocus on, and it's autofocus on for all 4 banks, and so that's back button focusing essentially. And so when my shutter button, when I half press, it does not focus at all. It just trips the shutter. Now the only thing that's different between all of these settings is my sub selector center button. If you're looking on the screen, let's see which bank am I in. I'm in handheld. So for handheld, which is bank A, when I press the sub selector center, it's going to go to 3D tracking. So if I press the center, you can see that 3D and animal and auto subject detect is selected. And what's cool is that I can change my focusing mode there. I can also press my recall shooting functions, and I have another autofocus mode up there. So we have 3 ways that we can, you have your standard selected autofocus mode in your bank, in your photo shooting bank, and then you have you can press the middle of your sub selector to go to another mode, in which case I've got 3D tracking with auto subject detect, Or I can press my function 1 and I can go to wide autofocus, small, with auto subject to text. So I can quick access to change those modes. Okay, so next item that we'll look at is the OK button, and for that it selects the center focus point for all 4 banks. Audio button does nothing. Quality button changes your image quality and size. I think that's the default for that, obviously. Vertical multi-selector center down at the bottom is autofocus on, or excuse me, is auto exposure, autofocus lock. Autofocus on is my back button focus for when I'm shooting in portrait mode. My video recording button, I have it set to, when I'm shooting photos, it's going to be my control lock. Of course, if I'm in a video mode, I'll be recording video. And then my command dials, I just left those default. So that's my shooting custom controls. As far as playback goes for the custom controls, those are all just default. I didn't make any changes to any of those. So I'm going to put those up on the screen, and you can see that, you know, function 1 through function 4 or function vert there's nothing assigned to that. Really, the only thing I use in playback is the zoom. So after I take a shot, I zoom in to check the focus point to make sure I'm in focus. So everything else is set to default. Again, it's bank specific, so if you want to make changes to this, you can, but I didn't make any changes. Okay, so I'll show you really quick how to make changes to your custom controls playback. It's the same as editing the shoot, like we did editing the shooting. So you would highlight F3 and then hit the right arrow, and then you can see that I've already, you know, these are all the default settings. So function 1 through function verticals are all off. If you do want to make a change, you just select the function button, you press OK, and then you can select whatever item it is that you want to change. The one thing that might be handy to set up is maybe a rating. Let me look. I don't think rating is actually already preset anywhere. No, I don't have ratings preset anywhere. I don't really, like I think I said earlier, the only thing I use on playback for my controls is the OK button to quickly zoom in to check focus on a shot that I'm reviewing. But I might want to, you know, rate a image. If I check focus looks solid, and I want to throw a 4-star or a 3-star on there. So I could assign rating, and you can see it says press plus command dials. So I'll just go ahead and select rating. I'm going to select none, and then if I take a picture and then I press function 1, you can see nothing selected, and then now I can use my rear command dial to set my stars. So if I thought this image of my lens cap was phenomenal, I could throw a 5-star rating on there, and boom, I've got 5 stars on there. So I may go ahead and remap my function 1 for all my modes to rating, because from time to time I do that when I'm reviewing images, especially if I'm shooting a bunch. So that's that. So that's your custom control shooting, as well as playback. And so we've got all that dialed in. Last but not least is going to be setting up your recall shooting functions. I made a video about this a few weeks ago. Actually, if you're watching this in the future, it's probably more than a few weeks ago, but a few videos back, I talked about it. I'll put a link up here where you can check it out. It's in my Z9 playlist. But essentially, I went through and showed you how to do it. I'll do a quick recap. So again, to access that, you hit the menu button, you go to your custom settings menu, make sure you have whatever bank it is that you want to edit. In this case, I've got bank B, which is my tripod bank. Go down to controls, go down to custom control shooting, and then highlight whichever function button you have set to recall shooting functions, and then go ahead and select that. Now, one thing to note, if I didn't point this out earlier, is that there's two recall shooting functions. This top one is essentially the same thing, except you have to press and you have to keep the button held to maintain those settings. Whereas this bottom one with the hold in parentheses, you just press the button once, it switches to your recalled settings, you press it again to go back to your other settings. So that's the one that I like to use. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the right arrow, and then you can go through and select all the different settings that you want recalled. If there's a checkbox next to the name, it will be recalled. If there's not, you just press the OK button. If you don't want that, so in this case, if I don't want the shooting mode to change, then I would leave that box unchecked. One thing to note with these settings, that all of them are customizable for each bank except for shutter speed and aperture, meaning that if I make, so we're in bank B, if I make a change to the shutter speed, so let's just drop that down, or let's bump it up to like 1/4000th of a second. All right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to press menu. I'm going to exit out here, and then I'm going to go to my custom C bank, and I'm going to go drop back in there. You're going to see that my shutter speed is 1/4000th of a second. So I'm not sure why it's set up like that. Maybe it's a bug, I don't know, but for whatever reason, if you make a change to your shutter speed in one bank, it affects all of your banks. And the same for aperture. In this case, you can see aperture is grayed out because I have it set to my shooting mode is changing to shutter priority. So of course the aperture is going to change. So having said that, let me just kind of show you an example of how you need to kind of work with this. So we're in bank C, which is my fast action. And so for my recall shooting function, I have it set to switch my shooting mode to shutter priority. And the way I like to have this set up, and again, this is going to change the shutter speed for all 4 banks, and it kind of drives me crazy that it does that. But when I'm shooting, in this case, I shoot a lot of motocross. And, you know, a lot of times I'm using a really fast shutter speed, but sometimes I want to use a slower shutter speed, and I want to pan with the motorcycle to kind of blur the background and keep, hopefully, the motorcycle in focus. So I'll have my recall shooting function set up to go to shutter priority, and then to drop the shutter speed down to like 1/60th or 1/80th of a second. And so then I'm going to go ahead and exit out, and let's just say I've got my, so typically the way I'm shooting is I'm in manual mode. I've got my my aperture wide open. I've got my shutter speed maybe at, I don't know, 1/1600th of a second. And typically I have my ISO to auto, but that doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm shooting some you know, fast action, and now I want to switch over to a panning shot. So it's great. All I have to do is press function number 1 in my case, and you can see I changed to shutter priority and 1/60th of a second, and then of course it would be changing my aperture to whatever's required to maintain that exposure. So that's super handy. It's unfortunate that the shutter speed you can't customize for each bank, and it changes from bank to bank, but maybe in a firmware update they'll update that, or maybe there's some reason. Let me know in the comments if you can figure out why they have it set up like that, because I haven't been able to figure that out yet. In the downloads that I'll give you, and I'll put up a link here pretty soon. I'm trying to keep you guys engaged. Of course, you can always fast forward, but I do have a blank copy of the recall shooting function so you can record it, and then I've also got a copy for how I've got mine set up. For example, the Bank D for my aerials, when I press that button, I just want to be able to switch the metering mode quickly. So I turned off, and I'll show you that. If I go in here to I'm in Bank D now, I go to recall shooting functions, you can see that I have everything unchecked except for metering. Pretty much everything else, I'll put my Z9 settings up there. You can see pretty much everything else is the same between all the different banks. There's not a lot. I mean, one thing in tripod mode, really, you know, if I'm shooting landscapes and then an animal comes into the scene, that's why I don't have it in auto subject detection. I have it specifically set to animal. And also you can see the autofocus area mode changes from bank to bank a little bit, just based on what I'm doing. But for the most part, everything else, when you look at the settings for that, are all checked and are for the most part the same. You know, these settings aren't 100% dialed in, and they can't be necessarily, because you know, especially in handheld, it just depends on what I'm doing. So like if I'm in handheld mode and I want to go to a panning mode quickly, I'll go ahead and just reset recall shooting functions hold to go to shutter priority and a slow shutter speed. So I kind of modify these on the fly. The only one that is pretty much set in stone, well, the only two really that are set in stone are B and D, banks B and D. Okay, so that is it for my settings for the Z9. Hopefully you found this helpful, and I do appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. And like I mentioned earlier, I put together a couple PDFs for you that you guys can download. One PDF is going to have all my settings that we talked about today, and the other PDF is going to be blank, so you can record you know, your own settings there and have a hard copy of it if you need it. Hopefully you never need it, but you never know. Plus it kind of helps to write it out when you're fine-tuning your Z9. So I'm going to put a link above, and what that's going to do is take you to my website, to a web page where you can sign up for my email list. I'm not going to spam you. It's just occasionally I may send out an update on the YouTube channel or my website, print sales, stuff like that. In the future, I hope to run some workshops as well, so you'll be in the know. Once you sign up for that and hit submit, it's then going to redirect you to my YouTube page, and that's going to have some links to videos and things like that, but it's also down towards the bottom. We'll have a download section by video. There's only one right now, but I hope to have more, where you can download, you know, these things that hopefully will help you. I realize it's kind of hard to follow along sometimes in videos, and I've been told I talk fast, so hopefully having a handout will kind of help you guys either follow along, or you know, it'll help you after the fact navigate those menus, because they are kind of confusing sometimes. Anyway, if you like this video, if it was helpful for you, please give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel if you want to see future videos. Down in the comments, let me know what you think of this video, what you'd like to see in the future from this channel, and I appreciate you watching. Till next time, see you later.